followers of darkness, why are we jealous? What is this feeling? And how can we get rid of it? What is envy? One of the most destructive feelings that can possess us is envy. What makes us envious? Why do we succumb to it? What is this force that is so closely tied to our desires and aspirations? And, most importantly, how can we free ourselves from the shackles of envy? What feelings do you have when your girlfriend or friend gets married? Everyone around you is happy. Wedding, smiles, love, joy, gifts, congratulations, and you do not even have a permanent partner, not even with whom to go to a cafe or a movie. And here comes this feeling that scrapes from the inside, aching with pain, makes you suffer. This pain that gnaws from the inside, a huge feeling of jealousy. Your schoolmate, friend wrote some program or application and sold it for some crazy money, which is counted in millions of dollars. And here, there is a feeling of some pain, a feeling of inferiority, a consciousness of dissatisfaction with yourself. And most importantly, this is an inner pain, dissatisfaction and anger that arises in the address of a more successful competitor in life. Each of us, undoubtedly, has faced envy in his life. And perhaps you yourself have become an object of envy for others. Perhaps you are so successful that many around you envy you, and you are also hurt by the fact that you have become a source of the basest feelings. You no longer believe in love, in friendship, in the sincerity of the people around you, because inside you realize that you are only an object and there can be no sincere feelings for you. And in both cases, this feeling can be extremely destructive. We are destroyed when we are envious, and we are destroyed when they envy us. Think back to how you have dealt with envy in the past. What methods helped you overcome this feeling? Maybe you found comfort in the fact that everyone has their own path and their own battles. Or maybe you found strength in wishing others success and being happy for them, instead of comparing yourself to them. It's important to realize that envy is not only a negative feeling, but also an opportunity for personal growth. It shows us where we are lacking in our lives, where we want change. However, if we do not find ways to deal with this feeling, it can lead to the destruction of our personality and our inner world. So let's look for ways to overcome envy together. Let's talk openly about this feeling. Let's refer to our personal experiences and the experiences of others. Let our sincerity and openness become our weapons in the fight against envy. And let the path to freedom from it become part of our spiritual growth. Contact me, write to me. I am always ready to listen. I want to encourage you to openly communicate and interact in the comments. There are many topics in our world that we are embarrassed to discuss, many questions that go unanswered for fear of judgment or misunderstanding. But know that here, in this little corner of the internet, you can be yourself. Your voice matters, regardless of who you are in real life. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. Share your questions and doubts. Ask questions, and you will get answers to them. In this place, every comment is an opportunity for new ideas, for enriching the dialogue. Be sure that your opinion is respected and valued. Subscribe to our channel. Let there be more of us, people who need each other. Remember that each of us is capable of overcoming envy, both alone and next to the same poor people. To find inner peace is the goal of our meeting today. Let's move forward together on this path and help each other. Envy, my friends, is that dark force that makes us compare ourselves with others and sink into the ocean of dissatisfaction and suffering. We see the successes of others and feel our soul turn green with envy. But let's stop and ask ourselves a question. Why? Why do we allow this feeling to control us? Let's dive into the world of envy. Let it settle in our heart and understand why we so often allow this feeling to overwhelm us. Why do we allow envy to control our thoughts and actions? This is an important question that we must find an answer to. Otherwise, we risk destroying our personality and relationships with others. Darkness lets you know that it is not just a superficial feeling. Envy often arises out of our desire for recognition, success, and material goods that we see in others. We begin to compare ourselves to them and feel unworthy or dissatisfied with our lives. Envy feeds on our negative thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. We believe that we will never reach the same heights as our successful friends, that we have no chance of happiness like other people. These thoughts create stress and depression in our minds, which further increases our feelings of envy. We think that envy is a manifestation of darkness, and it is the darkness that prevents us from dealing with this feeling. But we must realize, envy is not inevitable. It is a state like pain, like anger, like craving, and it can be overcome. We can get rid of the feeling of pain just by taking a pill, but we can only get rid of envy by being aware of our feelings, by being aware of who we envy and why, by recognizing that we can and should be able to deal with it. We can work on our self-esteem and self-confidence by realizing that everyone has their own way and their own problems. Stop comparing ourselves to someone else instead of comparing ourselves to others. We can focus on ourselves, our own achievements, goals, and values. We can strive for the best, regardless of what is going on in other people's lives. How to learn to be happy for the successes of others and see them as inspiration, purpose, aspiration, and not a reason for envy. And we realize that most often envy is a feeling that is extremely difficult to cope with. But there is some variant, which can, if not deprive on the ability to envy, then translate it into a positive feeling. Envy can be both white and black. White envy is the desire for something that others have, without the desire to harm them. But it, as well as black envy, can envelop us with its heavy blanket. Black envy is something more dirty. It entails the desire to do harm, to deprive others of what we do not have. Envy, my dear ones, is one of those feelings that can penetrate into our life, turning it into a real hell. Believe me, we encounter different forms of envy, and it is important to understand how they affect us and our relationships with others. White envy is the desire for something that others have, but without the desire to hurt them. It can be an inspiration to us, a motivation to develop and achieve our own goals. However, white envy is not without consequences. It can cause a feeling of dissatisfaction with ourselves and our position, shrouding our minds in a heavy blanket of dissatisfaction. Black envy, in turn, is something more dangerous. It envelops us in darkness and leads to the desire to harm others, to deprive them of happiness or well-being. This feeling undermines our moral principles and mental balance, causing us to act out of selfishness and malice. Regardless of the form envy takes, it leaves our soul wounded and torn. If we don't find answers to this feeling, it can lead to the destruction of our identity and our relationships with others. We must be open to talking about our feelings, sincerely trying to understand their causes and consequences. Only then can we find inner peace and true well-being. And although I always say that darkness and only darkness will help you to cope with your problems, in this case, I say and ask you only one thing: turn your black envy into white envy. Let us together overcome the darkness of envy, black envy, and free ourselves from the press and oppression of inner pain. So how do you live with such feelings? How to overcome envy and stop envying her? It is important to realize that envy is not only a negative feeling, but also a challenge to spiritual growth. We should strive for self-improvement, for the development of ourselves, and not compare ourselves with others. To stop this eternal battle with envy, we must learn to accept ourselves as we are, with our strengths and weaknesses. We should not compare our lives to the ideal images that society imposes on us. Each of us is unique, and only by accepting this can we free ourselves from the shackles of envy. So let us together direct our efforts to find inner strength. Stop envying others and start appreciating what you have. Envy, my friends, is that dark force that makes us compare ourselves with others and sink into an ocean of discontent and misery. We see the successes of others and feel our soul turn green with envy. But let's stop and ask ourselves a question. Why? Why do we allow this feeling to control us? White envy, black envy. White envy is the desire for something that others have, without the desire to harm them. But even white envy is ready to be colored black. And then black envy can envelop us with its heavy blanket. Black envy is something more dirty. It entails the desire to cause harm, to take away, to steal, to take away, to deprive another of what we do not have. How to live with such feelings? How to overcome envy and stop envying? It is important to realize that envy is not only a negative feeling, but also a challenge to spiritual growth. We should strive for self-improvement, for the development of ourselves, and not compare ourselves with others. To stop this eternal battle with envy, we must learn to accept ourselves as we are, with our strengths and weaknesses. We should not compare our lives to the ideal images that society imposes on us. Each of us is unique, and only by accepting this can we free ourselves from the shackles of envy. So let us direct our efforts to finding the inner harmony of our world. I emphasize our inner world. Stop envying others and start appreciating what you have. Inner peace, the presence of inner strength, the ability to move forward without paying attention to inner pain, without comparing yourself to others, with their successes, their achievements. The meaning of life is not to have more than others, but to be grateful for what we already have. May each of us find the strength to overcome envy and find inner peace. Always with you, forces of darkness.